Hey guys, it's Quickie Baby and I'm bringing you the new Russian tier 10 medium tank. This is going to be a fairly detailed opinion on the Object 140 and why I think this is probably going to become the new tier 10 medium tank in the game. And when I say probably become the new tier 10, I mean it's going to become the new best tier 10 medium tank in the game. So the best way to compare this tank is to look at it against the T62A. And why is that, you say? That's because they did not include a new tier 9 Russian medium tank. Basically what happens is previously this gun was a dead end, but now you can go on from this gun straight to the Object 140. So all of you players like me who valued the extra aim time over the extra penetration are now able to go on to the Object 140 instead of the T62A. Now, the important thing that you guys need to know is that this tank costs 206,000 experience to research. So you can go get it in your T54, turn off your accelerated crew training, make sure you don't convert any experience like I have done twice in my T54 already, and try and reach that magic goal of 206,000 experience so you can play an Object 140 on release. So now why should you do that? Well, I'm going to explain now. And the best way to do this is to compare the Object 140 and the T62A. So we can see the Object 140 has got 50 less hit points, it weighs a ton less, but it has the same engine, which means that it is slightly faster to accelerate. Also, the top speed limit is increased by 10%, but the traverse speed is decreased by a small margin of 2 degrees a second. Now its frontal hull armor is 2mm thinner, but its side armor is 5mm thicker and its rear armor is 5mm thicker. All the rest of the stats are completely the same apart from the signal range where the T62A is slightly better. Now I say the stats are the same, but the guns are slightly different even though they are the same gun mounted on different tanks. Here we can see that the Object 140 has slightly worse accuracy by 0.01 and has slightly worse aim time by 0.1. This is marginal and it doesn't really make too much difference, but it is something to consider. Now the frontal armor on this Object 140 is angled better. As we can see here, the profile of this tank, it's much lower profile than the T62A. And as we can see along here, the frontal armor on the tank has got a much better angle, which means that it's able to bounce more on its upper plate. Now when we're looking at the frontal profile of the tank, the turret mantlet is much smaller, which means hitting here and here on the tank are probably going to be slightly weaker on this, but it does still have 240mm of frontal turret armor that's very well angled. The one thing that is interesting is that, as you can see, the Object 140 actually has an extra cupola on the tank. As we can see, the T62A just has this cupola. When we look at the 140, there's one here as well, which means that it gives an extra weak point to shoot. That's probably the worst thing about the Object 140 compared to the T62A. Now remember that the Object 140 has insane DPM, just like the T62A, able to fire over 9 rounds a minute with 320 alpha damage. That's incredible. If you get a chance to unload at the full rate of fire on this tank, you're going to start decimating enemies. You're going to end their life so quickly, and you have the maneuverability to get away from them. Okay, so in a nutshell, what are the differences between the Object 140 and the T62A before we get in game? Right, the tank is slightly lighter, and it's got a better top speed limit, but worse traverse. What this means is that it's going to be faster to accelerate, and it's going to reach a better top speed limit. However, it's going to be slightly worse, but it's very negligible at turning. Okay, so the frontal armor is got a better angle, but it's still not very good, so don't expect this tank to bounce much in high tier games. Now its gun is pretty much the same, however it does have slightly worse accuracy and slightly worse aim time. One thing that must be considered though is that the traverse speed of the turret is 40 degrees rather than 48, so the T62A might be able to react quicker than the Object 140 as an example. However guys, I'm about to show you one of the main reasons why this tank, in my opinion, is vastly better than the T62A and why I think this is completely unbalanced and unfair on T62A drivers. I also think this change might be reverted before it is released. It might be accidental, but we'll have to see what they do come release. So here we go. We're going to test out the gun depression of the Object 140. So you can see me here assembled with a bunch of the QSF players. We're all on the test server, playing in different tier 10 medium tanks. We're going to line up along this flat area, and we're going to test the gun depression. And there you can see that Foss doesn't quite understand what we're trying to do, but he gets there in the end. Alright, let's give this our best shot. So we're all going to line up. Now, what the test is, we're all going to aim our guns down as far as we can, with our turrets hopefully being lined up so it's a fair test. And we're all going to fire directly frontally. Now you see me lined up here against the T62A. Immediately you can see that the Object 140 is much lower profile than the T62A, which is the other tier 10 Russian medium tank. You can also see that the angle of the armor on the Object 212 is much higher than the T62A. And there we go. Here's the gun depression fire test. Now, we can clearly see that the M48 has the best gun depression, able to aim the nearest to its tank. We can see that the T62A and the E50M have about the same, and the Batchat and the new Object 140 have about the same. Now, is this balanced? Why should this Object 140 get better gun depression than the T62A? To me, it's completely mind-boggling why the Object 140 should get better gun depression than the T62A. Because, in theory, it's got better angled frontal armor, it's lower profile. Fair enough, it has an extra cupola on the tank, which I highlighted in the garage. But the fact that it's got better gun depression is completely tank changing. It's completely tank changing. Let's show you a working example of where this better gun depression might come into effect. So here we've set up an example of the Object 140 versus the T62A. What you can see here is the Object 140 has got surprisingly un-Russian gun depression, and it's able to snipe the weak point on the M48. And the M48 in his position, fair enough, he's upper slope, cannot hit me. Coldius, playing the T62A, right next to me, is unable to shoot the M48. What I tell Coldius to do, just to make sure it's a fair test, is take my exact same position and to see if he can make the shot. And evidently he can't. He's telling me that he's able to fire only about a meter or two over the top of the M48. And really, this just hits home what the difference is between these two tanks. They're almost completely the same, apart from the Object 140 is slightly faster and it's got better gun depression. So you be the judge, which is the better tank. It's very clear to me which one is going to be better, and I will be buying it as soon as I can if it remains like this. I'm pretty sure that Wargaming will change this. I think they will nerf the Object 140's gun depression to be the same as the T62A, and if they don't, in my opinion, my humble opinion, there is no point in having a T62A in the game. You might as well just play the Object 140. So guys, I hope you've appreciated this review. This is the first iteration of the test. Changes will happen probably. If this tank stays in the game as it is right now, I really think that this is going to become the new best medium tank in the game. It's going to become the new best medium tank in the game. Having the DPM of the T62A while losing its only weakness, which is really the gun depression, albeit that its hull armor is not impressive. Still, if I could change one thing about one tank, it would be the T62A. Give it some gun depression and then I would love it. It'd be my tank. That's it really. So remember that you can get to the Object 140 using the T54, so don't feel too bad that your T62A is almost now worthless. Fair enough, the T62A might have a role in clan wars, with the fact that you might run out of tier 10 tanks and you might need to play a T62A, but I feel for tank, the Object 140 is just going to be vastly better. Of course, this review will become completely void if they nerf the gun depression on this tank. However, if they nerf the gun depression on this tank, there is no differences between the tank. And effectively, really, in my opinion, there's very few differences between the tanks anyway, as I've highlighted earlier in the review. The thing that makes this overwhelmingly better is the gun depression. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this review. If it's been helpful to you, please consider rating it down below. I'd really appreciate it. And tell me what you think about this. Are you a T62A driver who's really annoyed that now they've introduced this tank, which is basically just a better T62A? Maybe you're a driver of an M48 pattern or an FV4202, and you're annoyed that now the Russians don't only have better DPM, but they're also going to be getting gun depression as well. What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really hope you've enjoyed. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.